There are moments in history that begin not with the clash of swords, but with a whisper in a silent, candlelit room. Historians often point to grand battles and signed treaties, but the truth of this story, a truth they have sometimes tried to obscure, begins in the private grief of a king and queen. It is a story of a love that curdled into obsession, a faith that was twisted into a weapon, and a desire for a son that would bring a nation to its knees. And let the story begin. The court of King Henry VIII is a dazzling spectacle. He is not the bloated, tyrannical figure of his later years, but a golden prince in the prime of his life. Tall, athletic, a brilliant jouster and a gifted musician, he is the embodiment of a Renaissance king. And at his side is his queen, Catherine of Aragon. She is the daughter of Spain's legendary monarchs, Ferdinand and Isabella, a woman of immense piety, regal dignity, and unshakable will. Theirs is a genuine love match, born from a political alliance but deepened by mutual affection and respect. He is the sun, and she is his devoted, constant moon. For nearly 2 decades, they rule over a glittering, hopeful court. But behind the velvet curtains of the royal bedchamber, a profound and desperate tragedy unfolds. The purpose of a queen is singular: to provide a male heir, to secure the fragile Tudor line. And in this, Catherine fails, again and again. Her first pregnancy ends in the birth of a stillborn daughter. Her second gives Henry the son he craves, Prince Henry, Duke of Cornwall. The kingdom rejoices, a lavish tournament is held. But the joy is cruelly brief. Just 52 days later, the baby dies, leaving an emptiness that echoes through the palace halls. The tragedy repeats itself in a brutal cycle of miscarriages and stillbirths. In a kingdom stalked by the constant, terrifying threat of the sweating sickness, a mysterious illness that could kill a healthy man between dawn and dusk, the absence of a clear air is not just a personal sorrow. It is a source of national terror. One child survives, a daughter, Mary. She is bright and beloved by her parents, but she is not a son. Henry, a man steeped in scripture and superstition, begins to look for a reason for this barrenness, a cause for this divine punishment. And in the dark pages of the Old Testament, in the book of Leviticus, he finds what he believes is his answer. A single verse: "If a man shall take his brother as wife, it is an unclean thing. They shall be childless." Before she was his wife, Catherine had been briefly married to Henry's older brother, Arthur. The marriage, she has always sworn, was never consummated. But for Henry, the words on the page are a sign, a divine judgment that has haunted his marriage bed for 20 years. His soul, he believes, is in mortal peril. It is in the midst of this spiritual crisis that a new woman appears at court. She is not a princess, not a duchess. She is Anne Boleyn, the daughter of a courtier, recently returned from the sophisticated courts of France. She is not beautiful in the conventional, placid way of the era. She is striking, with dark, captivating eyes, a sharp intelligence, and a wit that is both alluring and dangerous. She carries herself with an electrifying confidence that sets her apart from every other woman at court. Henry, a king accustomed to taking what he wants, is instantly enthralled. He showers her with gifts, with poems, with his royal attention. But Anne is different from the mistresses who came before her. She has seen how queens are maiden and maid. She refuses him, denying him her bed. She will not be a royal plaything, cast aside when the king's passion cools. She will be his queen, or she will be nothing. Her refusal is a masterstroke. It turns the king's infatuation into a consuming, all-powerful obsession, and becomes the answer to all his prayers. In her, he sees not just a woman he desires, but the promise of a legitimate son, the salvation of his dynasty, and the cleansing of his soul. His private great matter, his crisis of conscience, now has a very public, very human face. Scholars debate whether Henry's religious conviction was a genuine crisis of faith or a convenient justification for his consuming passion for Anne Boleyn. Was he a man tormented by his soul, or a man enslaved by his desires? The truth is likely buried in the unknowable complexities of his heart. But whatever the cause, his path is now set. He must be free of Catherine. Catherine of Aragon watches this unfold with a quiet, steely resolve. She is no longer the young, beloved bride. She is a woman in her 40s, her youth and beauty faded, her body weary from years of fruitless pregnancies. But her pride and her faith are undiminished. Beneath her magnificent royal gowns, she secretly wears the coarse, scratching hair shirt of a Franciscan tertiary, a constant, private act of penance and devotion. When Henry first confronts her, pleading with her to accept an annulment and retire to a nunnery, she refuses. To do so would be to declare their marriage a sham, their entire life a lie. It would be to declare their daughter, Mary, a bastard, illegitimate and unworthy of the throne. She stands before him not just as a spurned wife, but as a queen defending her honor, a mother protecting her child, and a devout Catholic defending the sanctity of her sacrament. Her marriage was made by God, and only God or his representative on earth. The Pope can unmake it. Henry, convinced of his own righteousness, sees her defiance not as strength, but as stubbornness. He is the king, he is God's chosen ruler. He has been patient. Now, his patience is at an end. He sends his most trusted advisors, his most powerful ministers, on a secret mission to Rome. They carry with them theological arguments, legal precedents, and chests of English gold. They are to persuade Pope Clement V to grant the King of England an annulment. It is a simple request, they believe, a formality, but they have underestimated the forces at play. They have underestimated the will of a forgotten queen, and they have underestimated the chaos they are about to unleash upon their world. The city of Rome is a cage, and the Pope is its prisoner. When Henry's envoys arrive, they find not a sovereign pontiff, but a man living in the shadow of a greater power. Just months before, the armies of the Holy Roman Emperor, Charles V, had brutally sacked the city. Pope Clement V is now effectively a captive, his decisions dictated by the will of the most powerful man in Europe. And that man, Emperor Charles V, is Catherine of Aragon's beloved nephew. He will not stand by and watch his aunt be cast aside, her name disgraced, her honor destroyed. The Pope is caught in a vice. To grant Henry's annulment would be to defy the emperor and risk utter ruin. To refuse would be to anger a powerful and loyal King of England. So he does what trapped men have always done. He stalls. He plays for time, hoping the king's passion will cool, or that some political miracle will solve his dilemma. He does not yet understand the nature of Henry VII's obsession. It is not a fire that will burn itself out, it is a furnace that is just beginning to roar. Back in England, the court becomes a place of whispers and shadows. Time stretches into an agonizing wait. In Boleyn, though she holds no official title, is the new center of power. She has her own apartments, her own ladies-in-waiting, her own faction of ambitious reformers who see in her the future of a new kind of England. Her presence is a constant, public humiliation for Queen Catherine. The two women pass each other in the corridors of Greenwich Palace like ghosts from different worlds, their retinues parting in icy silence. To the common people, Catherine is the wronged queen, a figure of pious sympathy. Button is something new. She is feared, she is resented, and she is a tantalizing symbol of change. Henry's devotion to her is absolute. In the long months of their chaste courtship, he writes her a series of passionate, desperate love letters. Henceforth, my heart shall be dedicated to you alone, he writes, his elegant script filling the page. The letters, which somehow survived the centuries, are a raw, intimate portrait of a king utterly undone by love, or by what he believes is love. His obsession becomes his entire world. When the sweating sickness returns to London with a vengeance, the court panics and disperses. Henry flees, but when he learns that Anne has fallen ill, he does not abandon her. Conquering his own mortal terror of the disease, he sends his own personal physician to her side with constant instructions, his letters frantic with worry until she is out of danger. He cannot, and will not, lose her. While an S-star rises, Catherine is systematically erased. She is moved from the grandeur of the king's side to a series of more remote, less comfortable manners. Her household is reduced, her loyal ladies-in-waiting dismissed and replaced with spies. She is being isolated, pressured, slowly squeezed into submission. But Catherine does not break. She remains a queen in her own mind, her dignity a silent, unbreachable fortress. She spends her days in prayer, writing letters to the Pope and her nephew, the Emperor, pleading her case not as a scorned woman, but as a defender of the faith and the holy sacrament of marriage. Her quiet defiance infuriates the king. He wants her to bend, but she is made of Spanish steel. After 2 years of diplomatic stalemate, the Pope offers a compromise. He will not rule on the case in Rome, but he will send a representative, an aging and infirm cardinal named Lorenzo Campeggio, to hear the case in England alongside Henry's own Cardinal Wolsey. Henry sees this as a victory. A trial on English soil, managed by his own men, can have only one outcome. In the great hall of the Blackfriars Priory in London, a magnificent court is assembled. It is the greatest legal and public spectacle the kingdom has ever seen. Bishops and nobles, lawyers and theologians, all gather to pass judgment on 20 years of royal marriage. Henry sits on a raised throne, Catherine, a smaller, humbler chair to his side. The king is confident. His great matter is about to be resolved. The trial begins. Henry's name is called, and he answers, "Here." Then, the crier calls for the Queen. "Catherine, Queen of England, come into the court." A profound silence falls over the hall. Every eye turns to the solitary, black-clad figure. And then, she does something no one expects. She ignores the judges completely. She rises from her chair, walks the length of the hall, and sinks to her knees at her husband's feet. In front of the entire astonished court, she speaks, her voice clear and steady, laced with the soft accent of her native Spain. "Sir," she begins, "I beseech you for all the loves that hath been between us, to let me have justice." She reminds him of her loyalty, of her honor, of the children she has borne him. "I have been to you a true, humble, and obedient wife," she says, her eyes locked on his. "This 20 years or more." When she is finished, she rises, gives a low curtsy, and turns not to her own chair, but to the exit. The court is in shock. The crier calls her name again, urging her to return. "It is no indifferent court for me," she says to one of her companions, her voice loud enough for all to hear. "I will not tarry." And then she is gone. Her defiance is absolute. She has refused to recognize the authority of the court, and in a single, breathtaking act of political theater, she has seized the moral high ground, transforming herself from a forgotten wife into a noble martyr in the eyes of all who watched. Henry is left stunned, his face a mask of fury and public humiliation. His meticulously planned trial has been shattered. Cardinal Campeggio, whose private instructions from the Pope were always to delay and never to decide, now has the perfect excuse. He announces that the court must adjourn to consult with Rome. The case is suspended indefinitely. It is a catastrophic defeat for the king. His rage turns upon the man he holds responsible, his great minister, Cardinal Wolsey. Wolsey, the architect of Henry's policy for years, is stripped of his titles, his wealth, his palaces. He is banished in disgrace, a broken man. Historians still argue whether Wolsey's failure was due to his own tactical errors or if he was an impossible scapegoat for a diplomatic situation that could never be one. But for Henry, the cause is simple. He has been betrayed. The old ways have failed him. The church, which he once championed, is now an obstacle, and the king, denied by the Pope and defied by his wife, begins to contemplate a new path, a darker, more radical solution that will not just break his marriage, but break his world in two. The failure at Blackfriars leaves a scar on the soul of the king. Henry's public confidence is shattered, replaced by a dark, simmering rage. The man he blames, Cardinal Wolsey, dies in disgrace on his way to face charges of treason, a broken giant who failed to give his master what he wanted. In the power vacuum that follows, new men emerge from the shadows, men with harder eyes and sharper minds, unburdened by loyalty to the old ways of Rome. Chief among them is a man of humble birth, a blacksmith's son named Thomas Cromwell. He is a lawyer of breathtaking intellect and ruthless efficiency, a political operator who sees the world not in terms of sin and salvation, but of power and obedience. Alongside him is the quiet, scholarly Thomas Cranmer, a priest with reformist ideas who has captured the king's ear. They do not offer Henry a new argument to persuade the Pope, they offer him a revolution. They whisper a seditious, intoxicating idea into the king's ear. Why plead with a foreign bishop for power that is already yours? You are a king, anointed by God. England is your domain. Why should its destiny be decided in Rome? This idea takes root in Henry's mind and grows into a conviction. Guided by Cromwell, he unleashes a legal and political assault on the church in England. It is a campaign of slow, relentless strangulation. Using Parliament as his weapon, he passes a series of acts, each one designed to cut the ties that bind England to the papacy. Taxes that once flowed to Rome are redirected to the royal treasury. The Pope's authority to appoint bishops is challenged. The English clergy, caught between their king and their God, are forced to sign a document known as the Submission of the Clergy, effectively surrendering their legal independence to the crown. It is a war fought not with armies, but with statutes and oaths, and Henry is winning. Then, in the cold winter of 1532, the dynamic shifts from a political struggle to a desperate human drama. After years of holding the king at bay, Anne Boleyn yields. She is now carrying Henry's child. The great matter is no longer a theological debate. It is a frantic race against the clock. If this child, the son Henry is certain God will now grant him, is to be born legitimate, its mother must be the undisputed Queen of England. The time for waiting is over. On a bitterly cold January morning, in a secret ceremony hidden from the world, Henry and a visibly pregnant Anne are married by Thomas Cranmer. The act is a profound gamble. In the eyes of the Catholic Church and every monarch in Europe, the King of England is now a bigamist, his soul in a state of mortal sin. With the deed done, there can be no turning back. Cranmer, now elevated to Archbishop of Canterbury, becomes the instrument of the king's will. He convenes a new court at Dunstable Priory, a safe distance from the volatile crowds of London. He summons Catherine to appear. From her lonely exile in Emthill Castle, she sends back her defiant reply. She is the king's true wife and queen, and she recognizes no court but Rome. Her refusal is exactly what Cranmer needs. In her absence, he formally declares her 24-year marriage to King Henry VIII to be null and void. Invalid from the very beginning. With the stroke of a pen, a life is erased. A few days later, he declares the king's secret marriage to Anne to be good, true, and valid. The final, brutal blows now fall upon Catherine. A royal delegation arrives at her door to inform her that she is no longer Queen of England. She is to be addressed only as the Dowager Princess of Wales, the title of her first, brief marriage to Henry's dead brother. Her royal household is dissolved, her servants dismissed, her great seal is broken. The most profound cruelty is reserved for last. She is forbidden from all contact with her daughter, Mary, unless both of them acknowledge Anne as the rightful queen. Both steadfastly refuse. The bond between mother and child is weaponized, their love for each other used as a tool of state torture. Catherine will never see her daughter again. In London, preparations are made for the coronation of the new queen, but the people do not rejoice. They still see Catherine as their queen, a paragon of virtue, and Anne as a scheming interloper. As Anne's magnificent coronation barge sails down the Thames, it is met not with cheers, but with a sullen, ominous silence from the crowds packed on the river banks. They openly call her the king's whore, their resentment a low, dangerous rumble beneath the forced pageantry. Henry can command obedience, but he cannot command their love. With Anne crowned and the Pope in Rome preparing to issue a bull of excommunication, Henry takes the final, irrevocable step. In 1534, Cromwell guides the Act of Supremacy through Parliament. The words of the Act are simple, but their impact is earth-shattering. It declares that the king and his successors shall be taken, accepted, and reputed the only supreme head on earth of the Church of England. It is a seismic break, tearing England away from 1,000 years of Catholic tradition. The spiritual life of the nation is now in the hands of one man. Historians still argue whether the English Reformation was an act of state driven by the king's dynastic desperation, or if it tapped into a genuine, pre-existing popular desire for religious reform. But for the men and women living through it, it is a terrifying leap into the unknown. All of it: the break with Rome, the humiliation of a queen, the sundering of a nation as faith has been for one purpose, the birth of a son. In September 1533, at Greenwich Palace, Queen Anne goes into labor. The court holds its breath. This is the moment that will justify everything. The child is born, healthy and strong. The physicians and midwives emerge from the chamber. But the news they bring is not what the king has been waiting to hear. The child is not the promised prince, it is a girl, with fine red hair and her mother's dark eyes. They name her Elizabeth. The king, who has remade his world to get a son, has been given another daughter. The immense price has been paid in full, but the prize he so desperately sought has been denied. The birth of a daughter is not a celebration, it is a judgment. In the cold light of day, King Henry looks upon the infant Elizabeth and sees not a child, but a symbol of his failure. The Great Schism, the defiance of the Pope, the casting out of his noble wife Catherine, all of it was predicated on the divine promise of a son. That promise has been broken. His infatuation within, once a blazing sun, begins to cool into a resentful, shadowed twilight. He has paid the ultimate price, and God has given him the same reward as before. The court, which had aligned itself with the new queen, now senses the dangerous shift in the king's temper. Anne, who fought so cunningly to win a crown, now faces a far more difficult battle, keeping it. The New England that Henry has forged requires not just a new faith, but a new kind of fear. To enforce the king's supremacy, Thomas Cromwell drafts the Treason Act. It is a terrifyingly simple and brutal piece of legislation. It is no longer enough to avoid acts of treason. Now, to even speak words against the king's new title is a capital crime. To deny that Henry is the supreme head of the Church of England is to condemn oneself to the most gruesome death imaginable, being hanged, drawn, and quartered. The theological debate is over. The age of blood has begun. The first great soul to be crushed by this new law is Sir Thomas More, the former Lord Chancellor of England. More is one of the finest minds in Europe, a man of profound learning, deep faith, and unwavering integrity. He was once a dear friend of the king, but he cannot, in good conscience, take the oath acknowledging Henry's supremacy over the church. It is a violation of his faith, a betrayal of 1,000 years of Christian unity. For his silence, he is arrested and imprisoned in the Tower of London. After a sham trial, he is condemned to die. On a summer morning, he is led out onto Tower Hill, a frail figure in grey, looking out at the waiting crowd. He tells them he dies the king's good servant, but God's first. His death sends a shockwave across Christendom. It is a clear and brutal message: no one is safe. If the king will execute his own friend, he will execute anyone. The break with Rome has not only given Henry spiritual power, it has opened his eyes to a staggering financial opportunity. England is dotted with over 800 monasteries, abbeys, priories, and convents. For centuries, these institutions have grown immensely wealthy, accumulating vast tracts of land and treasure. Now, Thomas Cromwell, with the king's blessing, unleashes a campaign to seize it all. It begins with a great survey, the Velar Ecclesiasticus, a meticulous inventory of every chalice, every acre, every last silver coin owned by the church. It is a domesday book of holy wealth. Then, the commissioners ride out. They are Cromwell's men, hard-nosed and unsentimental, and they descend upon the religious houses like a plague. What follows is the greatest act of cultural destruction in English history. The monasteries are not just closed, they are annihilated. Lead is stripped from the roofs, melted down in fires that burn for days. Stained glass windows are shattered, their jeweled colors crunching underfoot. The libraries, containing priceless illuminated manuscripts and centuries of learning, are torn apart, their pages used to wrap fish or polish candlesticks. The golden shrines of saints are broken open, the jewels pried out for the king's coffers. The bones of St. Thomas Becket at Canterbury, one of the most sacred relics in all of Christendom, are dug up and publicly burned. The monks and nuns are cast out, given a small pension and told to disappear into a world they no longer know. The people watch in horror. These abbeys were not just places of prayer. They were the heart of their communities, providing charity for the poor, care for the sick, and a connection to the sacred. In the fiercely independent north of England, this destruction sparks a massive popular uprising, the Pilgrimage of Grace. Tens of thousands of commoners march under the banner of the 5 Wounds of Christ, demanding a return to the old faith and the restoration of the monasteries. It is the greatest rebellion Henry will ever face. His response is merciless. He promises pardons, lures the leaders into a false sense of security, and then unleashes a wave of brutal retribution, executing hundreds. The king's will is now enforced by the hangman's noose. Scholars debate whether the dissolution was a necessary act of modernizing reform that broke the power of a corrupt institution, or a cynical, state-sponsored looting that destroyed centuries of culture for the king's financial gain. For those who lived it, it was simply a violent tearing of the fabric of their world. While the nation bleeds, the woman at the center of the storm finds her own world collapsing. Queen Anne has failed. Another pregnancy ends in the miscarriage of a malformed boy, sealing her fate. Henry's love has curdled into a cold, superstitious hatred. He sees her as a curse, a sorceress who bewitched him into this damnable marriage. He wants to be free of her, just as he once wanted to be free of Catherine. And Thomas Cromwell, the man who orchestrated her rise, now meticulously engineers her fall. She is arrested, accused of a grotesque and fabricated list of crimes: adultery with 5 men, including her own brother, incest, and plotting the king's death. Her trial is a cruel mockery of justice. Her supposed lovers are tortured until they confess. She stands before her judges, including her own uncle, and defends herself with courage and intelligence, but the verdict is a foregone conclusion. She is found guilty on the 19th of May, 1536, less than 3 years after she was crowned queen, and Boleyn is led to a private scaffold within the walls of the Tower of London. In a final, small mercy, Henry has spared her the axe, instead summoning a skilled swordsman from France to grant her a cleaner death. She makes a short, dignified speech, and then she kneels. The blade flashes in the morning light. The brutal divorce has come full circle, ending not with a signature on a document, but with a sword stroke in a stone courtyard. 11 days later, King Henry VIII marries Jane Seymour. The court moves on. The dust from the fallen abbeys continues to settle over a changed and fearful nation. The king has what he wanted: a new wife, an obedient church, and a treasury overflowing with stolen gold. He will, in time, get the son he craved, but the cost is a kingdom forever scarred, a people divided, and the ghosts of 2 queens who haunt the foundations of the New England he has built. The story of Henry's great matter is a story of how the most intimate of human desires for love, for a child, for a legacy can become forces of terrifying destruction. It began in the silent prayers of a desperate king and ended in the roar of a revolution that tore a nation from its past and set it on a new, uncertain course. The cathedrals still stand, their ruined abbeys open to the sky, monuments of stone and silence. They are a testament not just to the faith of those who built them, but to the fury of the king who broke them. This was the brutal divorce, a wound inflicted on the soul of a nation by a monarch who, in his quest to secure his dynasty, became a tyrant. rewriting the laws of God and man to satisfy the restless cravings of his own heart. The echoes of that break, of that choice, still whisper through the long corridors of history,